Today's Toy Spot, we are having a look at the Mattel DC Comics Total Heroes Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze was one figure I wanted to keep near the end because he's actually one of the figures that got me interested in this line in the first place. I kept seeing Mr. Freeze, not necessarily in stores because the stores here in Canada didn't stock very many of these, but I did see this guy online, and he intrigued me enough. For starters, I'm being a big Mr. Freeze fan and all, but he intrigued me enough to make me want to go out and try to find some of these figures. So in some regards, Mr. Freeze was kind of the one that got me interested in picking up this line. You can either thank him, or you can say, "Oh God, why did you do this, Mr. Freeze? Look what you've relegated us to in the series of reviews we've been watching." Mr. Freeze does have a choking hazard, small parts not for children under 3 years of age. He comes also with his Freeze blaster. An image up at the top left corner, not necessarily of this Mr. Freeze, although a Mr. Freeze. Spin around the back of the package. One of my favorite designs of Mr. Freeze is this one right here. His real name is Victor Freeze. Affiliation, in Justice League, Secret Society of Supervillains. Weapons, freeze gun capable of blasting gusts of cold and imprisoning his opponents. And his special abilities, cryogenics, genius-level intelligence, and superhuman strength. Other figures available are The Flash, Bizarro, and Detective Batman. Spots had a look at not all three of these. I looked at 2 of these. I didn't have a look at this Batman, though, because I had the black and gray Batman that we had to look at instead. Check out more from Mattel. Head over to www.mattelshop.com. Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. When we come back, though, we're going to get a better look at the Total Heroes Mr. Freeze. Some more heading away, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. How about the first thing that we have a look at for Mr. Freeze is his freeze gun. Quite nice, although missing a little on the paint side of it. It's only really just cast in a very pale gray plastic, but does not have any paint to speak of. Probably could go in and just kind of touch that up with a paint if I was any sort of paint expert. There it is right there. I thought by the fact that there was like a little notch here that it would be able to peg into some place, and sure enough, it does. It pegs in right to the back of Mr. Freeze. I also thought that there was a section on the side that it could peg in, but unfortunately the peg is too large. But at least you can peg it into his back when you're not displaying him with it in his hand. I think though for Mr. Freeze, it's fitting to have the freeze gun in his hand. Just seems right. Just seems right. And when something seems right, you just got to go with it. So again, the hands, and I have this issue with some of the figures here, the hands sometimes are a little finicky to get the weapons into his hand. But there's the freeze gun right there. You can only put it in the one hand. The other hand, closed shut. It is sculpted shut. Unfortunately, the elbow seems like it's a little on the loose side, or maybe, oh, it's the shoulder that's the loose thing. The shoulder is a little on the loose side, so to get him to properly hold it, his whole arm kind of is a little on the loose side. But it looks like for the time being he can hold it. I don't know how long that's going to be the case before it droops back down. Let's go ahead in the meantime and take the blaster off. It actually has weight to it for the size of the weapon itself. And let's have a look at Mr. Freeze. Yes, indeed, one of my favorite figures from this line. It seems, well, I guess no surprise to myself, it seems like I'm more interested in the villains of these releases rather than the heroes. But Mr. Freeze looks great. He really is. Actually, if you look at him top to bottom, there doesn't look like there's a lot of reused areas at all for Mr. Freeze. In fact, it looks like he's a brand new sculpt versus some of the other figures. And let's see who can we bring in. Spot's just got a pile of the figures on the side here that we've been looking at over the series of these reviews. Well, let's bring in Batman with that elastic band once again. There is Batman next to Mr. Freeze. Obviously a size difference between the 2 figures. I haven't looked at Lex Luthor yet. It almost seems a no-brainer, as Mattel loves to reuse molds. It seems no-brainer to me that they would reuse this in some way into armored Lex Luthor. We'll have to see that when we get that figure opened up. But there he is next to Batman. Clearly a height difference between the 2 figures. I do like that. It breaks up just some of the mundaneness of perhaps looking at the same body over and over and over again, which was one of the issues when looking at DC Universe figures. If you did a whole series of reviews, figure after figure after figure, and they all have the same body mold, it gets a little tiresome after a while. And it's still, I love these figures, but it's nice to get a departure and something different versus the same body mold countless times again. I don't know if it's deliberate or what they had planned for it, but I notice also, going back to the little areas on the side of his belt, that there's a hole on the underside of his arm as well. I don't know if in some way those were supposed to connect. Probably doesn't make any sense that they would connect because he wouldn't be able to move his arm. But it looks like something should be underneath his arm, something plugged into place, or something that should be plugged on the back here. Again, could be used for Lex Luthor. I don't really know yet. If you are curious, though, as to his dome, the dome is removable. Go ahead and pop that off. Revealing... No, it's okay. We'll quickly put your dome on before you warm up and die. There's his head sculpt there. A really nice head sculpt. He doesn't have an expression like Bizarro, perhaps, but still, he does have a bit of a sneer, though, and I like that. It's not as neutral as some of the other faces that we had to look at. He does have head articulation. It does move up and down, not really so much, but the head does at least move left and right. I don't know if it's just my eyes, but I notice when I put the dome on, it looks like everything is kind of facing this way rather than straight on. I know it's facing straight on, but for some reason it just kind of looks like it's teetering over to the one side there. But the body coloring is very nice. The black and this blue color. The blue has some of that swirling plastic in it, but it's not as noticeable as the Hawkman was. When it comes to his posability, we've already had a look at his head. Shoulders hinge out, not limited by his shoulder pads. All the way around motion. I almost dropped the figure. All the way around motion. A bend at the elbow, a rotation in the forearm, and rotation in the hand. Yeah, it does have a waist swivel, which is one thing I was surprised to find. Forward and back motion on the legs, bend at the knee, bend at the foot, and there's the underside of his feet. This probably could be a case where if you haven't collected these figures and you just like Mr. Freeze, I would say pick this guy up. He's actually fun. He's a fun Mr. Freeze. Slightly different in design, but clearly still reads as Mr. Freeze to me. Today's Toy Spot, we were looking at the DC Comics Total Heroes. Not quite Total Heroes, should have called this Total Villains, as we're having a look at Mr. Freeze. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more videos heading your way. As always, thanks for watching. Really appreciate that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.